Haylin,
Hi, John.
does it feel like we went to high school together?
It kind of feels that way.
It's been like what, 10 years?
No, John, like 20.
No, 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 really, how was it? Because it was 2010,
7.
2011 that we were.
No, I was working at OA at 2007. I was 22 years old.
Oh my
I'm about to
gosh.
be 40.
Dude, that is crazy.
I
I
know.
can't believe how young you were. Okay,
Yeah.
so thank you for being on my podcast.
Thank you for having me, John. This is my first podcast
I
ever.
know. I love it. I love that you know what? It's just it's serendipity because of our history. So Haylin Dennison, is that correct? Your last name, Dennison?
Yes, correct.
LCSW is a licensed therapist specializing in adolescent mental health. And that ties into her story and what we're talking about, how we know each other, which we'll get into. Haylin completed her graduate program at the prestigious USC here in LA and moved back to her hometown in 2021. Over the past decade, Haylin continued her mission to improve access to quality mental health services in Hawaii. She is currently on the is the PMAG Director of Integrated Behavioral Health, a founder of a nonprofit organization called Spill the Tea Cafe, which sounds awesome, by the way. This is a teen mental health clinic, and also a founder of Mindwerks Clinic LLC. Haylin is a mom of four, which blows my mind. Is passionate about teaching parents how to best support there's a lot of letters here, LGBTQIA plus youth. We're going to get into that. And Haylin is an advocate in her local community and sits on the board of directors for PFLAG, a Hawaiian chapter on issues including adolescent mental health, access to care for LGBTQ youth, and prevention of childhood trauma and abuse. Um, you've been very busy.
As you have been as well.
Yeah. So
Yeah, it's so
let's,
cool.
okay. So I want to start. Okay. Here's where I want to start. Let me know if this would work because I didn't know that Hawaii and LA, our time zones are different. You're three hours behind me. Can I buy a lottery ticket in California and then give you the numbers to the ticket, and then you 3 hours later play it, and then we split the earnings? It
Oh,
doesn't.
yeah, yeah. I know we don't have that here, though.
Well, you would have to. I would give you the winning numbers since I'm 3 hours ahead of you of the California lottery, and then you would play from there. Never mind.
Okay.
Um,
John, you know I'm not good with numbers.
yeah, either am I, and
Sorry.
that's why we got all
So,
this fucked up. Yeah.
but it's good because we're Asian, and I think that we should fight that stereotype. You know what I mean?
Well, you're only half Asian.
Yes, I'm half Asian.
Yeah, so you should be better at numbers than me. Um, okay, so let's talk about how we know each other. Haylin worked as a counselor at OA. It's a nonprofit, and this is where I got my start. And I remember I didn't want to work there, and I was freshly divorced, didn't have a lot of options, broke, didn't have a lot of friends, and the universe made me wear khakis and take the kids grocery shopping. And I remember I had a big ego then. Like I remember thinking, I just dropped 60K on a master's. I'm a therapist. I want a cappuccino and my office with a little waterfall and those silver balls. What am I doing here in the
Right.
trenches of Los Angeles?
Oh, yeah.
Playing with kids. And it was actually one of the richest kind of growth soil spaces for me. I grew so much, and I realized it wasn't even about helping kids. While you were doing that, you were also kind of in treatment yourself.
Absolutely. I completely 100% agree. And even now in my life, like looking back at that time, I still have lessons, that I take with me. But I do remember you kind of, yeah, before all of your success and everything. And you always just kind of reminded me of like my ex-boyfriend's older brother because he
Mm.
was Korean. My ex-boyfriend was Korean, and then his older brother, like you kind of had that vibe. And you like told me one time I came in with like a grande, like latte from Starbucks, and you told it was like very, very new. Like you were new or I was new. I don't know. Like
You were there before me.
Okay, so you were new.
Yeah.
And so I was like, what is, my first impression of you? And you literally said, there's no reason in the entire world why you should have like a grande or anyone should have a grande. You're like, you should have like a tall.
What? I said this?
Yeah. And I was
Oh
like,
my.
John, shut up. And then you're like, no, you don't need to have like a big ass coffee like that, Haylin.
Wow. So what was, I wonder where that was coming from.
That was funny. I think you're
was I
just
flirting with you or was I being a dick? Because
no,
that,
no, I think you were serious because you're very health conscious. Like remember like all the CrossFit you would do and like you were like eating very clean, right? So it's kind of you're
yeah, but
kind of
I don't think it's appropriate, especially if I didn't know you well.
you have evolved. So
I what?
you have evolved.
Oh, evolved.
Yeah,
Yes.
evolved.
I don't think that kind of comment is acceptable and would fly today. I would
Oh,
definitely. That's a very canceled type of. Well, I'm sorry for saying that. Obviously,
that's
that.
okay, John. I thought it was a funny story.
Yes, and so that's why we haven't spoke since.
Yeah, exactly.
So okay, what? Let me ask you this. So OA, and you were there for what? How many years? Was it
Three
more than
years.
5?
3 years.
3 years.
Mhm.
And I remember that you had this quality about you that was very nurturing, and I remember the all the kids, and this was teenagers we helped with addiction, and I remember they were very drawn to you. You let them watch shows like Friends, and I remember on the Saturdays that you were working, if I had to come into work for some reason, it just felt like you weren't working. It just felt like it was your house.
Oh yeah, it was my house.
Were
It
you
was
always kind of the nurturer, the caretaker? Because you're also
no,
a very young mom at the
yeah,
time.
I think at the time that I met you, I don't think I had Maddie yet, my firstborn. But through that process, I did have, get pregnant and then have Maddie. But I believe, I was drawn to the kids and the teens and like through my own work and through my own internal, I guess, transformation. I learned a lot of like that programming that kind of just shows up automatically was because of like a trauma response or that was what was expected of me, and so I was kind of always the person to try to make sure that I was managing other people's moods. Or also I think a big contributing factor is that my older brother was in a car accident and was uh, involved with drugs at a very young age, like 13, 14. And he got into a car accident, which left him with a traumatic brain injury. And so I think there was a lot of trauma around that incident. And it was almost like my way of trying to give back because I wasn't able to help my brother, right? Like it kind of showed up that way. And so, yeah, I think that it served me well, having that experience. And then still, like if you fast forward, it's crazy. Like today at Spill the Tea Cafe, it's kind of like the same vibe. It's just like, I'll show you soon, or like after this, but it's like a homey environment, or it's like looks like a living room setup.
Yeah. So at 13, after the accident with your, how old were you if your brother was 13? You were really young.
So yeah, my brother was 13 when he started, experimenting with drugs and things like that. I was 12. And so he got into an accident at 14. I was 13. And then he was in a coma for gosh, like 6 months. So, just in and out of the hospital, then a year of rehab, right? And all of that. And then having to be by my brother's side along that was really
Right.
difficult.
So you became an instant caretaker or
Kind
nurturer
of.
at that age.
Yeah,
This was in Hawaii, correct?
correct.
And tell me about what led you, what brought you to LA and getting into social work and helping other people.
Yeah, I mean, I was one of those kids like, the day after I graduated, I was off the island, kind of like I just need to get away from this place. And honestly, I could probably put my life on it that I would never return. That's how deep the trauma was, or that's how deep the programming was.
Mm.
And so, yeah, like moving back home was actually very difficult for me as well. And so,
Wait, why
along
did you did you want to leave because for many Hawaii is like paradise, right? And I was there once. I was dating someone from there and we went there during Christmas. It was the first time I've ever been there, Oahu, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing." It was like 80
yeah,
degrees and breezes. Why for you did you want to leave the island? Why was that like prison? Is it because you grew up there or is it because of the accident?
It's because I grew up there, and there was a lot, of course, my parents were very close to them, love them with everything I have. We have a great relationship now. But, my parents tried their best, and I grew up in a very, very Asian, patriarchal,
Mhm.
extremely religious household. And so, right, I was very limited in terms of my exposure to people or other types of beliefs or values. And there was a lot of like guilt and shame growing up. And so I think I wanted to get off the island as an escape, and that's what really brought me to LA. I loved LA. I still love LA. I miss LA, John. But I also know that I have a purpose here, and I am so glad to be surrounded by my family, and also help with all of the issues that Hawaii has, including like this major access problem or shortage of providers in mental health, and really like all specialties. There's a shortage here. So
So, me being Korean, I also grew up with not a lot of emotional milk.
right.
Dad, alcoholic, workaholic, not like abusive in any kind of physical, emotional abuse, but just not present, right? And so, was that the same for you, or was it different?
I think my mom was a stay-at-home mom, so
Mhm.
she was very much there physically, but I think she was a teen mom. So I should say, she had us when she was like 16 and 17 years old. So I mean, what do you really know, right? All she knows is Catholic school, and right, like to be extremely Christian,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know what else to say. I'm sorry, I'm not like, but yes, and so to appear a certain way, right? And to
Sure.
like cook for your man and make sure it's
Mhm.
hot and make sure you're serving them and you're not, you're submissive and all the things. So I think they didn't have the tools. They didn't have
Of course.
right. They didn't have the education and or ability to, but they definitely tried their best.
Haylin, I'm 49, and I'm like, how do you parent? This is so hard. And I mean, can you imagine? I mean, your mom, 18, 19, having a
Yeah,
kid,
yeah.
you know? So that was kind of the blueprint that was passed down. You also got married young, no?
I did. I did. I think I was like 23 or 24.
Yeah. So married, kid, and what was that like for you? Because at that point you were working in nonprofit, and I believe your ex-husband was a police officer or was
Yeah,
going in that
yeah.
route. How was
He
it for you guys? Yeah, first kid, and just kind of out in LA hustling and trying to make things work.
Yeah, it was so tough. I never wanted to leave LA, and he got into HPD at the time, and he was like, "Peace out," and he really left. I kind of like tested him, but he did leave, and I think I stayed in California for about 3 months before I was like, "Fuck this! Like, I'm not trying to be a single mom out here like
Mhm.
this." And that's when I moved back to Hawaii. But I guess that would be the start of my resistance to Hawaii, and kind of like that's when I really started my therapy journey to bring healing
Yeah.
to my
Yeah.
home and to what I knew. And it was just a time for me to transform. But I guess life had so many surprises for me. It was like I still had way more transformation, and I still have so much more transformation that I want to accomplish.
Yeah, you know what's interesting is when you were at OA and I knew you, I think you were curious about growth. I think you were curious about obviously helping other people, uh, but you weren't quite divorced yet, and so I think you were about to go on this like inner or hero's journey. Um, when I met you, I was in it, so I was just coming out
Mm,
of a divorce, and,
right, right.
and so it seems like you had your rebirth in Hawaii. I had mine on Olympic Boulevard or wherever that was with
Yeah,
discovering
yeah,
CrossFit and doing other things, making rude comments about coffee sizes and stuff. But for you, it seems like your rebirth was Hawaii. So
yeah, absolutely.
tell people what that was like. In one of my books, Sing on Purpose, I say I found myself through barbells, donuts, and motorcycles. What was it like for you?
It was really difficult because I was still living based on other people's expectations of me, and kind of like what the image should be for,
Mhm.
Asian moms, or, Christian moms, or whatever you want to call it. I think that it was hard for me to actually accept the fact, right, that I'm not in control of this other person. And the marriage was, and he is a great guy. We definitely co-parent pretty well. And I think that, yeah, we definitely operate better as friends. But during that time period, I really had this expectation that like he needs to be someone that he's not, And so, and then I had to decide like if I was going to be okay with that from now until the end of time or whatever. And I wasn't okay with it, but there was a promise I had made to Maddie that no matter what, if you hear me and your dad fighting, whatever, like I promise you, we will always stay married. And that was my biggest mistake of my life.
Oh my gosh.
And Maddie at the time, Maddie is non-binary, by the way, but at the time, in my eyes, she was just a little girl, like 6 years old, 7 years old. And she would just cry and say, like, you promised, when we had the talk with her that we're going to split up, like, you promised me this would never happen. And it was so just, I can't explain.
So the guilt you must have felt from that.
Yes. Right? The guilt and the pain, I think, was probably the most painful thing I've experienced.
Oh,
divorce.
Yeah.
I mean, for you too, right? Like in terms of your divorce, it was just this catalyst for change and growth.
Yeah. And, what made yours harder and more complicated was your child.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, for you to make a promise to her to say that we will never divorce. Oh
why would I say something like that? It's so ridiculous. Oh, I know why. It's because
we're young.
Yeah, and also my parents were divorced, and I was saying, "Oh, I'm never gonna get a divorce," right? Like at 23 years old, I'm saying that.
Also, you guys were not Hollywood. You guys were high school sweethearts, right?
Yeah, we were. Well, kind of like we were really good friends in high school, but we started dating in college. But yes, I mean, we grew up together.
Yeah, so you were kind of like all you guys known. Me now, after many relationships, I don't really believe in the one as far as you're supposed to be with one person for the rest of your life. I know that goes against, Christian teachings and other kind of religious teachings. But the reason I say that is because most of my clients, people who have met in high school or college or really young, if they're still together, they're very unhappy and they're together for the wrong reasons, right? They're together for the children or because it says so.
There's truth to that.
Yeah, and I'm not saying everyone, because I'm sure there are people that have been together for a long time and that have done a lot of work and they're very happy. But most people go through many expired relationships and they learn so much and they have these rebirths and then they bring more to the table in their next one,
Right, absolutely.
So you're in LA, your marriage is a little bit wobbly. You make this promise to your daughter. You're working in nonprofit. It seemed like you actually really enjoyed the work there, though.
I loved the work there. Yeah. I mean,
I didn't.
Yeah, I loved it. And I kind of could tell you didn't like it, John. Like you'd always be kind of doing something else. You know what I mean?
I was blogging.
Yeah.
I was, you guys were doing case notes and I was in the corner blogging.
Yeah, and you're such a thought leader because all this that we're doing now, right? And like all the things I'm trying to learn, like I'm literally a boomer, like all this, my husband, like luckily, right, my husband knows how to do all this kind of stuff, but I literally cannot even like, I don't know, create a Zoom Outlook like invite, like I don't know. Anyway, but
you have gifts in other places. I mean, your gifts are with the human exchange,
Yeah. So I just remember you, and now looking back, like what a thought leader, because you're doing this 20 years ago, and now so graciously you're allowing me to be on your podcast, and you've done all the legwork to kind of be where you're at. But I mean, I just think for me, and that was, again, how old was I? Like 22, 23. I wasn't licensed. that was my first social work type of job. And I really connected with the kids. Sam, oh my gosh, like I, didn't have any boundaries. I was like fighting for him. Like, this is like my child, right? Like you go through all the countertransference and all that kind of stuff. And I think as a licensed clinician, I would not be able to do any of that kind of stuff, right? But at that time, you're just like this, almost like mentor to them. And so that's what I think I enjoyed about it. And I still, like, Sam got his MSW. He's like working on his LCSW. I still keep in contact with him. And it's just so nice to look back at that time and know that, that's kind of where I started really trusting that I could do something other than what was expected of me.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Um, Also, by the way, speaking of Sam was one of her clients,
Yeah.
teenager. One of my clients, Emily, I see her on Facebook and she has two kids.
So cool.
Her kids are older than my kids. It's so weird.
It's
And these are
crazy.
teenagers that we helped back in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you were such a catalyst, obviously, with not only Sam, but especially Sam, because you really have been like a mother to him, like a second mom, right?
I feel that way, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. That's awesome that he is now doing what you're doing or getting the license
Mhm.
and going down that path. Wow, that's
Yeah,
amazing.
and he's getting, sorry, I'm like, he's getting paid well too. I'm like, damn, Sam, there you go.
So, OA learned a lot. That was our sandbox.
Yes.
Haylin loved it. She found her gift. I was in the corner blogging on Tumblr and and cursing my birth. So that was our experience. But the people that I worked with were all great. Patty on down. I really enjoyed that. I learned a lot about this idea that we live in a fatherless nation. So working with all the kids. The boys either wanted to fight me or be me, girls
Mhm.
standing too close, running groups. And I was just like, wow, the common thread with all these kids is there was no father. Either dad was
Yeah.
missing physically or emotionally. And so OA, working in nonprofit there for about 5 years, that's where the fire in my belly, I had the fire in my belly to just like create a dialogue about men, new definitions of man, all of that stuff. So um, that was really it happened organically from there. So with
Interesting.
you, after OA, so now you're back in Hawaii, and now I don't know any of your story from here other than what's on paper. It seems like you've really gotten traction and you're thriving. So tell us the beginning of that chapter of your life and what happened since.
Sure. Yeah. When I came back to Hawaii, I was kicking and screaming and didn't want to be here.
Mhm.
Um, because I didn't do my own internal work. No matter where you go, like your trauma will follow you unless you actually sit down and look in the mirror and like be willing to do the work. And so I started doing that work. I eventually, um, really wanted to create a life for myself. I worked at uh, the state judiciary where I did a lot of like CPS and
Mhm.
abuse and neglect cases for children in Hawaii, and then I kind of went into suicide prevention
Oh wow.
at the VA Pacific Islands healthcare system, and that's kind of where I started the healthcare journey.
Mhm.
And from there, I struggled because one of my really good friends died by suicide, and I was like the suicide prevention coordinator, and that was so I took it so hard to the point
Wait,
where
one
I
of your
actually
friends that died by suicide when you were
yeah
younger, or then in Hawaii when you
no then in
Oh
Hawaii, yeah.
wow.
And so I mean I literally had to leave the profession. I'm not the profession, but that, and I had so much passion for that, and the work that I did I loved, but I think I really felt like it was long hours. Like there was so many like OIG and Joint Commission and all these things, and I would have to cover Guam and Saipan, and it was like a very difficult job. And I
Yeah.
think I kind of not blamed myself, but my friend would text me like, hey, like let's go to lunch, like this that, and I kind of was like, oh, I'm just running around. I also have my private practice, right? I've always been like Asian, just working,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
kind of felt like I didn't do enough to check in with him. Um,
Mm.
anyway, I'm gonna get emotional, but he choreographed my whole like my first wedding. He choreographed the whole Beyonce dance, and he was like amazing. And so that was kind of the push for me to like say, okay, what is it that I really want, right? And what I want is to be present with my friends and family, and
Mm.
also have a job that is fulfilling to me. And so from there, I really decided that I wanted to integrate like behavioral health and mental health into primary care, because that's something that Hawaii does not do,
Mm.
and also like a brand new concept. And so I, ended up with a physician organization who's been around for 30 years and just an amazing company. But yeah, over the past 5 years, just really grew that program. It started with me. Now we have like 30 staff, and just like,
Wow.
totally integrated with primary care physicians all over the island. And then I still have my private practice. I opened Mindwerks, which is specializing in postpartum depression for mothers. Obviously, like, I don't know if you know this, but I struggled with postpartum depression as well with 2 of my kids, 2 out of the 4.
I
And
didn't know
then,
that.
yeah, and then that kind of catapulted me into really, thinking about what I want to do in my career. And the reason that I opened Spill the Tea, which is actually Maddie's idea,
Oh, nice.
is because Maddie is privileged, right? And Maddie goes to a very expensive, like, private school here on the island. And even with all of that, there was a lot of bullying. And it's their story to tell, so I don't want to. But from my perspective, it was hard to see as a mom, your child just for like weeks on end crying in their room. And, as a mother, I felt like I needed to do something.
Yeah.
And I called the school and the dean and like all the different kind of providers, like, what kind of LGBT resources can I provide for my child? And I'm a therapist and I actually have a network, and I could not find anything. And a lot of it was because of COVID. So a lot of, like, groups shut down, a lot of activities and support groups. All therapists are full on the island, like, literally. And so I just kind of jumped into action mode and said, like, we're opening up, this cafe that you wanted to do after you become a doctor, Maddie, like, we're doing it. And so I'm just so happy that the community, my family, everyone kind of dropped everything to help us put this thing together. We had to gut renovate, DIY, like, we were here till midnight for months on end. And
Wait,
we just opened a few weeks ago.
let's tell people what Spill the Tea is. Spill the Tea started with your daughter, some of her experiences in school, you realizing there's no space that's safe, there's no outlet for teenagers or even younger. Is
It was more for the LGBT issues that they were facing, right? And the bullying that was happening, right? Like, people were calling them derogatory names, and things that like, old school, I'm sure.
Yeah, of course.
And so that was really
culturally not probably not accepted by, like, old school, Asian. Yeah. So you guys create this thing yourself. It's a coffee shop. You literally built it yourself, right?
Literally, or my dad did.
Yeah.
And what's so funny, John, is my dad is super, like, Trump supporting. Like, I'm not supportive of LGBT, and he's, like, literally here every, like, 7 days a week building this thing.
Well, then,
So
then this must be a huge catalyst in his life, as far as he's probably questioning a lot of things because he's here building it, and I mean, his granddaughter, and
I would argue that he's very fixed in his mindset, but he will do things that we ask him to do, which is, and he'll complain the whole time doing it.
Well, that's great. So he helped you build this thing, and then what services do you folks provide, and what is it?
Yeah, so it's just a safe space for teens. We're open every day after school, and then we're open on the weekends. We provide group therapy. So we have a depression group, an LGBT group. We have, like, anxiety group, self-harm, eating disorders. We have music and art therapy as well. And so kind of, an innovative idea to allow kids to come here and say they don't want to come to therapy. They don't have to, but they can study here, right? We have, like, a study area, and we have Wi-Fi. There's also, like, a gaming area where there's, like, PS5, and just to, like, really be able to connect with others. Whenever a teen feels lonely or like they don't fit in, that they can walk into this place and feel a sense of belonging. And so that's what I really wanted to create. And I think it's really cool because the kids serve boba and coffee and tea and snacks, and they just really hang out, so sometimes I'm like, hey, you guys, we need to go to group.
Yeah, the other thing is, because I'm thinking about my daughter, she's only 2, but if she was Maddie's age, it must be really rewarding to build something with your daughter.
So rewarding. And and I think, and it's my child, I should say kid, because they are non-binary, and we're still very much active in this journey. Maddie always, even as a 5-year-old, would ask to wear boys' underwear, and but I really, like, in my infancy of, I guess, just the programming that was programmed into
Sure.
me,
Sure.
I really dressed Maddie super girly and like
Yeah, I
that
remember
white
because she was
mini
so
and
adorable. Little Ugg boots and shiny things.
always.
Yeah, bows in the hair and all that. Yeah.
And I struggle with that now looking back at it. And I feel so guilty. But Maddie, identifies, again, it's their story to tell, but we're definitely in transition. Maddie does not want to be identified like as a girl at all.
Mhm.
And so, there might be a transition in the future, which I'm still going through the emotions of that. And also at the same time, understanding that I only want Maddie to be 100% themselves.
Of course.
And I'm so honored, like, to be a part of their journey and understanding that these lives are born through me and
Mhm.
not to me, and they're not my child is really hard, but I think it really resonates with me. It's such a huge part of my transformation, because I think for the most part, probably every parent feels that way. Like your hopes and dreams and your vision of what your child is going to be, um, should not, like, I should not get any of my self-esteem from that, right? Like if my kid goes to this school or that college or whatever, I mean, really, if Maddie wants to be whatever it is, like the
Yeah.
first time I allowed Maddie to cut their hair was, I think, 7th grade. And I cried because I'd never seen Maddie so happy.
Oh, was there also a sadness in you because of your, the poster of who you want Maddie to be is now torn, or it's different? It doesn't fit with your projection.
I think at that moment I had already done some of that work. And so my tears were more guilt ridden and
Mhm.
like, there's my child. Like my child is there and I've been like hiding them for so long. And
Sure.
so I think that was so powerful for me. Like the moment I had Maddie, like a mother was born and I felt like I had this transformation. But the moment I allowed Maddie to cut their hair and be who they were, I also saw a genuine human in there. And I need to allow them to become whoever it is that they want to be. And I will always be here to support that. Um, so yeah, it's been a little difficult, John.
Yeah, but Haylin, what an important conversation, a very topical one, especially today. I'm older than you. I'm like in between you and your mom, so my generation, there's a lot of residue. It's hard for me to even, with the language, being careful with them
Yes, yes.
and
Yeah.
it's hard for me too, and even just to wrap my brain around it, and then the tug from the old, so my wiring, my programming, and then of course the other part of me that is new and curious and open and non-judgmental. So there is inner conflict, and so it's not just us, I think it's the world, but at the same time it's a really exciting time because I think it's the first time that all of this is being shaken up and people are questioning. And at the end of the day, you're right, it's about Maddie just being happy. Like
Yeah,
that's all that matters. Everything else is
absolutely.
secondary.
Yeah.
And I would have, before I was a parent, I don't think I would have understood that. I would only just agree with you. But as I think about Logan and who she decides to be as she gets older, yeah, I mean, all I would care about is if she was happy. And then also, I could empathize with you and like the guilt or dressing her in cute clothes or later on. But you were also so young too, and so
Yeah.
um, it's that whole thing we say about our parents. They did the best they could with what they had.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but what amazing things you're doing now,
Thank you.
because of those things, right? Because like it's almost like taking the pain and then using it as a superpower, right? Allowing
Right.
yourself to heal and then taking whether it's guilt or whatever it is, taking those feelings and then healing and then pushing them through you and making a greater dent in the world because of that.
Right. And then having this obligation, right, to as humanity evolves, that there's a component of advocacy, right? And not just an obligation, but I feel um, a true purpose and calling, because so many kids are suffering right now.
Mhm.
And so because negativity is so loud, right, I think it's important that we are loud about the positive things that are happening, and that, you know, we can, again, like destigmatize mental health, right? Or
Yeah.
also like really be um, open to changing the narrative that we've all been programmed for so long, and to be able to, right, not like, you want to prioritize the relationship with your child, not, right, like I want to be close to my child, and what does that entail? Like a lot of people sacrifice that relationship with their child because the child is not doing what the parent wants them to do
Right.
as an adult, right? Or they're not on the path that they want their child to be. And what does that leave us with? It leaves space between you and your child, right? And your child won't come to you to talk to you about the problems they're facing, right? They're just, and so if you really want an authentic relationship with your child, I believe that it's only through your own inner work and your own inner transformation that you can actually achieve that.
Well, you said something really important. I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. And the reason why our parents are dry cement, our reason why our parents are who they are, like
Yeah,
example, you're saying that your dad, you know, even though he technically helped you guys build this,
yeah, he's not happy about
he
it.
hasn't
Yeah,
really changed, right? Whatever. Um, you have to go on an inner journey, and an inner journey these days are more accessible. You know, self-help books and podcasts, and you know what the dialogue we're creating today. Our
yeah,
parents didn't have that.
right.
Our parents was, it was about what food are we gonna put on the table? It's about survival. You know, my dad grew up, you know, plates thrown at his head, and he would, you know, get hit for stealing rice. He made his own shoes, like that kind of. So coming from poverty, like it's like self-help and therapy, that's like a luxury.
Oh
It's a
yeah,
little
it's like
thing, yeah.
Maslow's, right? Yeah, it's just if you're only worried about your basic needs, what um
Right, on the Maslow's hierarchy,
right.
it's yeah, you're not
Yes.
even going past the yeah,
No,
exactly.
right. And
Right.
so we understand, right, that we're evolving. And I don't mean to be insulting, but I'm just like, we are more evolved than what they were and what their parents were and what their parents were.
Well, I
So
think we're the generation, maybe more your generation than mine, that is finally going to change things. That's really, and then of course, Maddie's generation.
oh, Maddie's
It's
generation,
a
John,
whole nother.
I am not even worried about them. I'm like,
Yeah,
listen, you guys are good. Gen Z, I'm telling
yeah.
you,
Gen Z
they're
is
gonna
like
change the world 100%.
Gen Z. They're like aliens. I
They
don't
are.
even. Yeah,
I
at
don't
the
even know. I'm
rate.
like Maddie, and you know, probably because of the internet, really.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. No, well, it's just because everything that's happening in life that is like hockey stick scaling. You know, I grew up with pagers and shit. So like,
yeah, me too. Pagers.
yeah.
Yeah, the jelly bean pager.
Okay.
143, like 823, all that stuff.
And then you turn. Are you saying when you turn it upside down?
Yes, yes, yes.
Hello. Okay. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. Yeah.
Like, okay, anyway, I won't go into all the stuff we used to say. It's
Uh,
inappropriate.
I was just real quick. I was just at the gym, and the coach was playing '90s hip hop. You know, like old
Nice.
Jay-Z and stuff. And I was like, "Wow, this is amazing. Can I have this playlist?" And I said, "By the way, how old were you in the '90s?" And he was like, "I was born in '93." And I was like, "Oh my god!" I was like, and he's not like that young, right? He's
I
coaching, and I was
know.
like, I graduated high school in '91. I was like, dude, these songs I was putting into a 6 disc CD
I
changer,
know.
you know,
And
and
we were, if you had you had the six like CD changer, you were flossing, you know?
oh yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah.
I did. Anyway, yeah, you're doing amazing work, and so let me ask you this now. I just want to kind of pivot. So you have all these things. You know, you're on the board of things. You have this nonprofit. Hey, and by the way, why did you decide to make it a nonprofit and not for profit? Like, what was the? Did you just
Yeah.
feel like you could do more with the nonprofit?
The reason that I wanted it to be a nonprofit was because we wanted to service kids regardless of their insurance or their
Mhm.
ability to pay.
Right.
And so the only way we're able to do that is to go through a nonprofit sector, right? Because we want to offer these services for free, essentially. I mean, we're not at a place right now that we can do that for everyone, but that is the vision.
Right. Ultimately.
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah. So during the pandemic, I created this thing called the Lab, and it's just live Zoom groups
Very cool.
for adults, relationships or whatever, all this astrology readings, all sorts of stuff. And I'm also right behind you. I'm turning it into a nonprofit now to
Oh, cool.
let
Okay,
it
John,
grow. Yeah,
congratulations.
yeah. It's kind of the adult version of this Spill the Tea.
Yeah, exactly.
Mine's gonna be called Spill the Coffee. Grande, not a tall. It's a
Yeah,
grande coffee. You deserve a grande coffee.
yeah,
Whoever
that
you
is,
are.
yeah. But you
Anyway,
can, John, that's like really funny. I guess you don't think that was funny that you said that?
I didn't know I said that, but I got to be honest. I like that you said that to me because it reminds me of who I used to be. And one of my things is I am inappropriate, and I would guess that was a little toxic masculinity, a little ego. I was probably flirting with you, and like when you're a kid, if you like someone, you hit them. I think I was trying to um, say something or get a reaction from you. I was in the beginning of my evolution. I was still a worm. I was still just, and I think I was like 35 or 36, and you were in
Okay.
your 20s. And so
Hmm.
I think I was just bullying you. Speaking of bullies, I was a bully.
But it was fun. Like I think you were joking when you would bully all of us at OA.
Yeah. It was fun. I felt like it was high school, and maybe I was
Yeah. We
I
all
I,
made
I felt
so
like the kid that got held back.
no, we all made so many mistakes. I don't know if you remember this, but I crashed the van.
Yes, I do
Yeah.
remember that.
So we all
Right.
made mistakes. Yeah. That was
I crashed the van too. Oh no,
Oh, you did?
no, I
You crashed
crashed.
the van too?
You crashed the van. I crashed Patty's car, or I hit
Oh,
Patty's car. Yeah, and yeah, stuff like that. But lots of good times, and some drama mixed in with some drama.
oh yeah.
Yeah,
So much drama. And I
yeah,
think, but it was all fun. It was all fun.
yeah. And the biggest takeaway from that was the whole TC.
Yes.
The idea that a safe space, and I now teach on this, but I call it a container. But the idea that if you create a safe space, that growth can be organic, and that the power of like what you're doing at Spill the Tea, right? Creating the safe space, and then making it about the community, not enabling them, and then you're creating your own little OA. That's what you have.
Oh my God, I never thought of it like that.
It just hit me. I
But
mean,
it's
not like they have to make
it's
their
not
bed or anything
inpatient
because they don't
though.
live there,
I know,
but
no, they don't live here or anything like that.
oh,
But
it's your
maybe
OA, Helen.
maybe it could grow into that, like inpatient. I don't know,
I
John.
don't
That
know,
was a
but
lot of
I
work.
just feel like as I'm looking at you, I'm like, oh, she's also creating a space, and it's after school, and it's for a certain demographic, this community, and welcoming anyone, and it's a safe space. So whether they're playing games or doing homework, or whatever, and I was like, oh, that actually is kind of what TC's like.
Kind of,
Anyway,
yeah,
our subconscious working through us.
right.
Okay, I want to pivot. How do you do all this? Plus, you have a private practice and you're doing all this stuff, and then be a mom to four,
Yeah.
and your wife.
Yes, I am.
How do you how do you juggle? How do you juggle all of it? How do you do everything?
I have a lot of help. A lot of help. And
Is it family help or is it hired help? What kind of help are you talking
it's
about?
both. It's both. I
Mm,
think, women just have this invisible workload. And really, I want to bring attention to it because, right, even if it's in your head and it's mental, it's still very energy draining. And
yeah,
you're like thinking of like the kids' appointments and all their extracurriculars and their homework, right? And um, just everything in between, like the drop-offs and the pickups and the play dates and then you're supposed to do it all like looking cute, right? It's just so
and
impossible,
not complaining.
right? And then if you're like a working mom, then you're shamed. If you're a stay-at-home mom, you're shamed. And I just
Yeah.
like it's so frustrating. And I think I'm really finally growing into my own skin to say, hey, this is not okay. And this is like you can have it all, but you can't do it all,
Mm,
right? So for women, like if you want to work, then you should work, right? And if you want to stay home, then you should stay home. But either way, you will need help. And
right.
so I've always had a nanny. I have a personal assistant, Kiki, and my husband is amazing. And
Mm,
my parents help out a lot. Like my parents My mom takes two of my boys every Friday to Saturday. And I remember at the parent teacher conference, there was a comment made by this white lady. I don't need to say it was a white lady, but I just had to put that in there. And the white lady said, I'm really concerned about Mace because, he's going to different households. And he said that he sleeps at his grandparents. And I just looked at her and I said, this is not a concern. This is like our culture,
Mhm.
and I was like, and a lot of people in Hawaii have multi-generational households. We don't live in the same house, but we are very close. And so, right, to be able to respect the diverse type of families that are in Hawaii or across the nation and not make like assumptions like, oh, that must be an adjustment disorder or whatever, right? So anyway, and I forgot what I was saying, but basically I have a lot of help and I have to pay for a lot of help. And I think that investment allows me to have the energy that I need to show up as present as possible to my clients and parents and everything else.
What do you do for self-care? Anyone listening to this who can relate to what you're saying, and they are building an empire and also trying to be a parent, and all this stuff. What do you do for self-care, or is that something that's difficult for you?
It's something that's extremely difficult for me, and so I'm just trying to be extremely.
Besides Starbucks, I know you do a lot of Starbucks.
I do Starbucks, John. I do Starbucks like 7 days a week. So
yeah, I know. I remember. Yeah.
And so I hired a business coach, the best decision of my life. And my business coach is working with me on the self-care part. But that is something that I need to commit to and not overschedule. And so you'll be proud of me. I did, starting last week, right, every Friday half day where I can go hiking or something.
Nice. I love that.
Just moving the energy. And I think I haven't worked out in like 2 or 3 years. So I'm very excited. I'm worried about the follow through, but I'm going to have my business coach keep me accountable.
I love it. Fuck it Friday. So it's a half day.
Yeah.
Half day plus movement.
Yes.
I love it. Well, Haylin, I'm really proud of you. And I didn't know that what you were up to. I didn't know that you have built such amazing things. So I'm a little bit in awe, and it's like amazing to have known you in your 20s then, and you were already doing great work at OA, but going through the divorce. I mean, that's what we have in common, both going through the divorce, rebirth, and it's really interesting how the universe put you back in your hometown where most people would promise we'd never go back. Exactly. And then creating something beautiful there, a prism, and helping other people. It's such a powerful story.
Thanks so much, John. And I know this is your podcast, but I'm really dying to hear about your baby, because when I saw that on Instagram, I literally got a little emotional. I was so happy for you. And like, I just knew that you were going to be the best dad. And when I saw that, I was just like, I really could see your evolution. And as you're going to tell me, like, I'm sure it's just nothing but joy.
Well, I wouldn't say that, but I do feel like I pulled an Indiana Jones. Like I pulled the hat out before the door closed. Okay. Because if I waited another year, I don't think I would have been a father. I didn't. I feel like I'm too old, And so we had a miscarriage, and then the second time we had Logan. So I'm gonna be the 67-year-old dude that picks her from school, and her friends are like, "Your grandpa's here." And
you guys are also going to be like best friends, and you know what I mean.
I was meant to have a girl, and she is one of the only things besides this. I still ride motorcycles that makes me present. I'm in my head constantly, and so when I'm with her. Oh my gosh, just so much joy. You're right. But the first year, the joy is only coming in now at age 2. The first year, it was 10 times harder than I thought. She was just, putty. She would just poop, eat, sleep. And then, like, for me, I didn't have a lot of connection And then now I'm starting to build that. And so she, you know, ABCs, personality. I'm trying to teach her Korean.
Oh
Uh,
my gosh, you are. That's amazing.
yeah.
She
So
is so cute. I'm like, I can't get over it. She's so cute. And yeah, that first year is like you're a zombie and also
yeah,
like,
it's shocking. The
yeah,
first year was shocking.
yeah. My
Yeah.
poor husband. We also, so when I got remarried, we also had one baby and 3 years old.
Did he also have a child?
No, he didn't have any kids.
Oh,
So, but he was totally like just instant dad, right? Like I think it's
yeah,
fair to say like
yeah.
instant dad, just add water, he had 3 kids already, like changing diapers, whatever. And then yeah, we decided to have Maya, and he like okay, so but I'm just gonna say like the conversation was like a whole year of therapy. Like I'm done, I'm not having any more kids.
Mm.
And you know, he was like, if you know we do this, like I will not that I obviously knew I was gonna love this infant with everything, but I just was tapped out, right? Because I
Wait,
was a
were
single
you
mom,
done with Maddie, or how many did you have where you're like, I'm done?
3. Yeah.
Oh, and then
Mhm.
one
I
more. Got
had
it.
3 and then I was done and then we got remarried. But you know, essentially we laid out all the expectations, and Alex said that he would do all of the, you know, getting up at night and
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
like bottle feeding and doing the things because I could not, right? And he really held up his end of the bargain, and he's an amazing dad. You know, Maya just, you know, it's daddy, 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 everything. So
Oh,
it's really nice, but I think it's so cool that you and I have
how old is
kids.
Maya?
She's 3.
Oh, okay, a little bit old. Yeah, she's so cute.
Yeah.
What are the names? Maddie, Maya.
So Maddie, Maya, Mason, and Morgan.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Wow. Yeah, you're like the Asian Brady Bunch, you two.
I am. We
Because
are.
4 kids now
Yeah.
is like, you know, our parents having 7, 8 kids. No one has 4 kids.
It is.
Yeah,
Yeah. Or
amazing.
Filipinos. My husband's Filipino, but Filipinos
Oh,
have a lot of kids,
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
FYI.
Well, if I'm ever in Hawaii, how do you say Hawaii? Because I know we all people from
Yeah.
California are just like Hawaii.
Yeah. It's like Hawaii. But
Yeah, I
yeah,
can't say.
you guys ever come down, we're gonna have to do a play date, and I can't, you know, wait to meet her. And then also your
Oh,
beautiful wife. She's
yeah.
amazing and smart. And I'm just like, wow.
We're not married yet, but we're thinking about marriage.
Oh,
So
I'm sorry, but yeah, yeah.
that's
And if
okay.
you
No, I
don't
mean
get married, you don't want to get married.
we no we I'm open to it. So we're now talking about marriage, and it's the first time I've said it publicly, so it's here. But that's the other thing you and I will have in common is divorced and remarried, and you know all of that. Bad at math. Hey, um, anything you want to say to, because it seems like what you're really passionate about is um, adolescents, teens, bullying, people who feel different that shouldn't. Um, what do you want to say, if anything, to, uh, yeah, like Maddie, you know, that whole Z, the Gen Z, no, not Generation Z,
Yeah,
yeah,
Gen Z. Yeah, Gen
yeah,
Z, they're amazing. I think what I'm learning, and it's a lifelong journey as a mother, right, is that we need to see people for their humanity first,
mm,
and really be able to value people for their diversity, and also to be able to find your voice, because it's not okay to just sit on the sidelines and you know take this programming that we have to just you know keep your head down. And you know like even the model minority, like I have a problem with that, and that's supposed to be a compliment. Like it's I just want people to live their own truth, but in order to do that you have to do a lot of learning, right? And so for people to really access like self-learning or podcasts, I mean, even like this is so helpful. But if you have the desire to grow and to evolve, anybody can do it. And I promise, I just think it's the best gift you can give yourself. So
thank you so much.
yes, John.
You've really inspired me just through this conversation.
Oh my gosh, you inspire me. You're like goals. The following you have and everything. I swear you really inspire me, and I hope to get there one day.
Where can we find you, Haylin?
Yeah, you can find me at haylindennison.com, or Haylin Dennison LCSW on Instagram.
Yeah, follow her and her story, and all the work that she's doing. And if you're in Hawaii, check out Spill the
Spill
Tea.
the Tea Cafe.
Yeah,
Yes.
cafe. All right, Haylin, thank you so much for being on my podcast. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, John.
Be well. Bye.